Last year, I set out 5 big missions for an incoming Labour government. And what I'm now doing is going around the country with the first steps of those missions, talking to people about how they're going to work. And that's why I'm here in Milton Keynes. One of our missions that we set out last year was about reducing crime, making our neighbourhoods safe, and halving violence against women and girls. And that's why we absolutely have a determination that if we're privileged enough to come in to serve in government, we will tackle knife crime, halve knife crime. And that's why I've been setting out my plans in Milton Keynes today and ensuring that we can bring people along in this sense of a national mission to not just pick our country up after 14 years of failure, but take it forward and make it a renewed country, a better place, a safer place, where people feel that they can move around their community free from the fear of crime. Steve, thanks for raising knife crime. You speak for many people in raising knife crime because I think so many people are concerned about the level of knife crime, the impact of knife crime, and the lasting effect it has on communities where people don't feel safe. So we've got to get to grips with it. We will do the hard yards and we will deliver. That falls into 3 parts. Firstly, we've got to stop the availability of knives. Zombie-style knives should not be available online, end of. The second thing is to intervene before someone is injured with a knife, by assessing who's at risk, what support can be put in. Here at Milton Keynes, the police have got a risk register, and then they intervene to try to pull a young person out of the system before they get into a situation of using a knife. And any family that has lost someone to knife crime knows that that is vital and absolutely needs our support. And then, of course, the third bit, which is what happens if you're caught carrying a knife. And my message on this is very clear. If you carry a knife, you carry the consequences. And that means that all the tools at our disposal need to be there. Of course, in the most serious cases, that is custody. But in too many other cases, the outcome has been the writing of an apology letter. Well, I think we need to do more than that. We need a plan to stop reoffending and use the other tools in the box, curfews, tags, behavioural contracts. And so we can, by going down this route, take knives out of the hands of young people in the first place, intervene when there's risk before something happens, and then ensure that the right consequences are in place for those who are caught carrying knives. Max, thank you for your question. Thanks for what you do as a police officer. I worked as the Chief Prosecutor for England and Wales for 5 years, working with police officers all across England and all across Wales. So I know the demands on your job, but I also know the spirit in which you and other officers approach the job that you do. So thank you to you and to all of them. You're absolutely right that we need to fix our broken criminal justice system. Too many people are getting away with crime. Too many members of the public think that antisocial behaviour isn't really dealt with anymore. Too many people think that in our neighbourhoods who know what's going on, know their community. And that's why we've got a plan to recruit 13,000 police, absolutely to be deployed in the neighbourhood. It's why we've got plans to ensure that we can improve the charging rates and get people in and through our courts much more effectively. It takes far too long at the moment, and to make sure that we can have the right disposals for people, particularly those at the upper end who need to go to prison. So all of that needs to be fixed. I worked as the Chief Prosecutor for 5 years. I know what needs to be done. I know how hard it will be, but I know that you only achieve change if you set your mind to it, work with others, including of course the police, and make sure that we can clear up the mess of the last 14 years and get our criminal justice system back as one of the best systems in the world. Pat, thanks for your question about police officers in every neighbourhood. You're absolutely spot on here. What we've seen in the last 14 years is the collapse almost of neighbourhood policing, that sense of an officer who knows his or her patch in the community, working with the community, if you like, the eyes and ears of the community, because that's how a lot of effective policing is done. So we need to get back to that model. Gives people great confidence, allows the individual officers or teams of officers to pick up what's going on the ground, often to nip issues in the bud, but be much more effective when things go wrong at getting in and ensuring that law enforcement can do their job. We have a plan to recruit 13,000 neighbourhood police. That'll be police designated to be working in their communities, alongside their communities. And that, I think, will be of great comfort to many people across the country who, at the moment, have lost faith in the idea that we can actually do anything about crime and antisocial behaviour, which blights the lives of too many people. Thank you, Andy, for that question. It's really important because we all want to see more neighbourhood police. I think that gives great confidence to local people that there's a police team working in their patch, the eyes and ears of the community, nipping things in the bud before they happen, dealing with the consequences by way of law enforcement where things go wrong. Now, of course, that's got to be paid for, but as everybody who's worked in criminal justice knows, every police officer knows, there's far too much waste in the system that we need to get out of the system. But also there's far too much unnecessary bureaucracy, which bogs things down, takes too much time, uses up money which could be freed up to pay for those 13,000 community-based police that we need to see back on our streets. So take the waste out, cut the bureaucracy, and turn it into what I think most people want, which is more police officers in their patch, local neighbourhood policing, which gives people such confidence in the policing in their area. Jasmine, thank you for raising this issue. Violence against women and girls is pernicious, and it's far more widespread than most people think, and therefore we have to tackle it. The impact is devastating on too many lives, and that's why we've set out that one of our driving missions, if we are privileged enough to come into government, will be tackling violence against women and girls, a real sense of mission and purpose. Now, when I was the Chief Prosecutor for 5 years in England and Wales, I worked on violence against women and girls with police forces, with health professionals, with specialist groups, community groups. So I know how hard it is, but I also know how vital it is. There are obvious steps that I think we can take. One of the simplest would be to have domestic violence advisors in the 999 rooms to ensure that when those emergency calls come through, we have the eyes and ears of an expert helping at the very start. Obviously, we also need to change our criminal justice system so that women and girls feel more confident coming forward to report what has happened to them. At the moment, too many people feel that they can't report. We need to ensure we create the environment that they can report, that the court system is not an ordeal that nobody ever wants to go through again, but actually is a process for achieving justice. But we also need to do the hard yards of prevention and reduction, and I think that takes us back to our schools, talking to our children and young people, particularly to boys. And so at every step along the way, we have to have a real clarity of mission. And I'm convinced that working with others, we can achieve this, but it is hugely, hugely important that we do. Kim, it is really important that we prevent our young people getting involved in crime. If that's going to happen, we have to recognise that we need support mechanisms in. Now, some of that will be at schools. I want to see mental health workers in our schools working with children and young people who need that desperate support. I want to see mental health support in our communities through hubs. I want to see what we call young futures. This is where there's an identification of a young person that may be going off the rails, may be at risk, and by bringing together all the relevant agencies and support mechanisms to put a package around that young person and if you like, pick them out and prevent them going any further into a life of crime. That, of course, saves their future, gives them the future that they want, the hope they want as young people, but also vitally means that the other people who might have been the victims of that young person will not be victims in the future. So that preventative measure, that intervention is vitally important. If you talk to anyone who's been a victim of crime or lost a family member because of crime, they know that this preventative intervention work is absolutely key to reducing crime.